Tonight we journey not to a battlefield of clashing steel, but to a quieter, more intricate arena of power, the polished wooden floors of a Joseon dynasty government office. You are no warrior, you are a newly appointed junior official in the royal secretariat, and your weapons are a steady hand, a sharp mind, and a deep understanding of the unspoken rules that govern every interaction. The year is 1590, and Seoul, known then as Hansong, is a city of echoing temple bells and the soft, pre-dawn scuff of leather-soled shoes on cobblestones. You feel the chill of the morning air seep through the layers of your dopo robe as you join the river of shadowy figures flowing toward the palace complex. The scent of pine smoke from 1,000 morning hearths mixes with the distant, briny smell of the Han River. You clutch your letter of appointment, a scroll that feels both impossibly light and heavy with consequence. You are entering a world where a misplaced comma in a royal edict could be more dangerous than a misplaced sword in a scabbard, and frankly, you probably won't survive this if you think blunt honesty alone will carry the day. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your first challenge isn't a person, but a gate. The Gwanghwamun Gate looms in the half-light, its massive timber doors a stark barrier between the bustling city and the serene, powerful epicenter of the kingdom. Guards in polished brigandine armor stand motionless, their breath pluming in the cold air. You present your scroll, your heart thudding a rhythm that feels far too loud for this hushed procession. The guard's eyes scan the document, then you, with a practiced, impersonal gaze. He gives a curt nod, and you are in. The transition is immediate. The city's cacophony dies, replaced by the profound silence of wide, swept courtyards and the majestic, sweeping curves of tiled roofs against a lightening sky. You follow the stream of officials, all moving with a purpose you can only pretend to possess. You are a tiny cog, and you feel it in your bones. The mainstream historical fact you're living is the hyper-centralized bureaucracy of the Joseon dynasty, a system refined over centuries and built on the foundational principles of Neo-Confucianism. Your entire career, your social standing, your very identity, is now tied to your performance in this labyrinth of paper and protocol. The hierarchy is rigid, from the lowly shambong like yourself, all the way up to the state councillors, and you are at the very, very bottom. You try to mimic the posture of the older officials, back straight, eyes forward, hands clasped, but you're acutely aware of your own clumsiness, the way your new robes feel stiff and unfamiliar. You find your building, a long, low structure with latticed windows, and slip inside. The air changes again. It's warmer, thick with the familiar, pungent aroma of ink and paper, a scent that will become the backdrop of your life. A senior official, his samo hat denoting a rank you can only aspire to, glances up from a ledger. He doesn't smile. "The new shambong from the Andong Kim clan?" he asks, his voice dry as old parchment. You nod, bowing slightly deeper than necessary. He makes a note in his ledger, a single, sharp character. Your desk is there. The morning reports from the 8 provinces are due for initial review before the hour of the snake. He gestures to a small, low desk tucked near a back corner, upon which sits a teetering stack of documents. It's your first mountain to climb, and you haven't even taken off your outer coat. As you settle onto your cushion, you take in your new domain. The desk is scarred with the ink stains of countless predecessors. Your tools are laid out with ceremonial precision, a stack of fine hanji paper, a heavy inkstone, a cake of solid ink, and a selection of brushes. This is your arsenal. The quality of your inkstone was a silent but powerful status symbol. A superior stone, made of high-quality slate from a specific quarry, would produce a smoother, blacker ink with a finer consistency, and your colleagues would notice. They would notice everything. The man at the desk across from you gives you a slow, appraising look, his eyes lingering on your brush holder, a simple, unadorned bamboo one, before he returns to his work. You are being sized up, not for your intellect, but for your connections and your taste, or lack thereof. You pick up the first document, a report on grain tax yields from Jeolla province. The script is a dense forest of Chinese characters, each one demanding your complete attention. A single misreading could throw the entire accounting into disarray. You unstopper the small bottle of water you brought and begin the meditative process of grinding your ink. The rhythmic circular motion of the ink stick against the stone a small, calming ritual in the rising tension. The sound is a soft, grating whisper, joining a chorus of similar whispers throughout the room. Historians still argue whether the famed efficiency of the Joseon bureaucracy was a result of its strict hierarchical structure or the immense social pressure placed on individual scholars to not make a single, embarrassing mistake in front of their peers. As you dip your brush, preparing to make your first mark as a government official, you feel the weight of that argument pressing down on you. The tip of the brush touches the paper, and your new life begins not with a bang, but with the silent, deliberate stroke of a character meaning reviewed. The stack of provincial reports, which you had optimistically thought was a single day's work, reveals itself to be a hydra. For every document you process, initial, and set aside, an attendant seems to materialize from the shadows to place two more on the growing pile at the edge of your desk. This isn't a mountain, it's a mountain range, and you're crossing it in slippers. Your wrist begins to ache from the constant, precise motion of brushwork, a dull throb that pulses in time with your heartbeat. The morning light, which had initially streamed hopefully through the lattice, now feels like a spotlight on your inefficiency. You glance at the official across from you, a man named Yi, who moves with a serene, unhurried grace. His brush dances across the paper, his stack diminishes at a steady, almost magical rate, and he hasn't once looked up in a panic. You, on the other hand, feel a single bead of sweat trace a path down your temple, a treacherous betrayer of your inner turmoil. This deluge of paperwork is the lifeblood of the kingdom, the mainstream historical reality of a pre-modern state administering a population of millions. The annals of the Joseon dynasty, which would one day be a UNESCO World Heritage Treasure, were compiled from millions of documents just like the ones currently threatening to bury you alive. Every tax receipt, every census record, every provincial governor's complaint about bandits or poor weather, every legal dispute over a stolen ox, it all passed through rooms like this, was read, summarized, and catalogued by men like you, their eyes straining in the lamplight. The sheer scale of it is humbling. You are not just reviewing grain yields, you are touching the very fabric of the state, one tedious, ink-smudged page at a time. The secret language of paper folds. Not all documents are created equal, and the manner in which a report is folded and sealed communicates its urgency and confidentiality before a single word is read. A standard administrative report is folded in a simple, tri-fold manner. But the one you pick up now, from the border garrison in the north, is folded into a tight, intricate knot, sealed with a dollop of vermilion wax impressed with a military seal. This is the bureaucratic equivalent of a shout. Your heart skips a beat. Is it an invasion? A rebellion? With slightly trembling fingers, you carefully break the seal and unfold it, only to find a vehement, and deeply detailed, complaint from the garrison commander about the inferior quality of the kimchi supplied by a local village, arguing that the lack of proper spice is directly impacting his soldiers' morale and vigilance. You sigh, a mixture of relief and profound absurdity washing over you. You still have to process it. You draft a brief memo summarizing the complaint for your superiors, your brush capturing the commander's outrage over poorly fermented cabbage with the same gravitas you'd use for a royal decree. The content is mind-numbingly varied. After the Kimkai crisis, You move on to a dispute between two farmers over the lineage of a prize-winning rooster, a request from a coastal village for funds to repair a seawall after a storm, and a lengthy philosophical essay from a regional magistrate on the proper interpretation of a passage from the Classic of Rights, which seems to have been included by accident. You learn to skim, to identify keywords, to separate vital information from bureaucratic filler. It's a skill no one taught you at the academy. There, you debated the great texts. Here, you are deciphering the grievance of a man whose neighbor's pig keeps escaping and eating his vegetable patch. Historians still argue whether this immense, detail-oriented bureaucracy ultimately made the Joseon state more resilient or more brittle, whether the focus on minute administrative control blinded it to larger, strategic threats looming on the horizon. As you read a strangely peaceful report from the southern coast, a region you know from private letters is suffering from pirate raids, you feel a chill that has nothing to do with the draft from the window. The paper can lie, or at least, it can omit. The truth is not always in the characters written, but sometimes in the spaces between them. A soft chime signals a short break. Most officials stand, stretch, and move to the back of the hall for a cup of hot barley tea. You, however, are paralyzed. You've only gotten through a third of your stack. If you take a break, you'll fall further behind. If you don't, you risk appearing unsociable, a lone wolf in a pack that values harmony above all else. You see Yi stand, and he catches your eye. He gives a barely perceptible shake of his head. It's not a reprimand, it's advice. Stay. You nod in gratitude and lower your head back to your work, the message received. Sometimes, the appearance of dedicated diligence is more important than the diligence itself. The message is also clear. Yi has noticed you. He's aware of your struggle. In this office, you are never truly alone, never truly unwatched. The paper mountain isn't just a test of your intellect, it's a test of your character, your endurance, and your understanding of the silent, unwritten rules that govern this quiet, paper-filled world. You dip your brush again, the ink now perfectly mixed from your continuous grinding, and you press on, the rustle of paper and the scratch of brushes composing the symphony of your new life. The break ends as quietly as it began, the officials returning to their desks with a collective rustle of silk. The brief respite has done little to ease the ache in your lower back from hours of sitting on the floor cushion, a pain you now understand is a fundamental part of the job description. As you shift your weight, trying to find a new position that doesn't feel like a form of slow torture, your eyes begin to wander from the endless characters on the page to the geography of the room itself. You start to see what you were too overwhelmed to notice before. The office is a map, and every desk, every object, tells a story of rank, ambition, and connection. The mainstream historical fact you're observing is the physical manifestation of the Yangban class system. Your position in this room isn't random, it's a carefully calibrated reflection of your family's prestige, your examination scores, and the subtle favor of your patrons. The senior officials, the ones whose memos you are processing, occupy the desks closest to the source of heat in the winter and the best light from the windows. Their desks are larger, made of a dark, polished Namu wood, and are clear of the chaotic piles that clutter your own. They possess an air of curated emptiness, a sign that their work is of a higher, more conceptual nature, delegating the gritty details to cogs like you. The unspoken language of the inkstone. You recall your first day's observation, but now you see the full spectrum. The man across from you, Yi, has a fine, dark slate stone, its surface worn smooth with use. It's a mark of a seasoned, mid-level careerist, respectable, but not ostentatious. But then you glance at the desk of a man named Park, 2 rows over and much closer to the window. His inkstone is a stunning piece of juice stone, imported from China, with a naturally occurring, intricate pattern that looks like mountain mist. It's not just a tool, it's a statement. It says, My family has wealth and connections you can only dream of. He never speaks of it, but he doesn't have to. Every time he grinds his ink, the silent, superior scrape is a lecture in itself. Your own simple inkstone, a functional but plain piece of local stone, suddenly feels like it's shouting your humble origins to the entire room. It's the equivalent of showing up to a modern board meeting with a cheap, plastic pen that leaks. You find yourself unconsciously covering it with your sleeve when you aren't using it. And the brushes, oh, the brushes. You have two, a standard one and a finer one for annotations. Official Park has a whole porcelain stand holding at least 10, each with a handle made of different materials. Jade, lacquered bamboo, even what looks like ivory. He selects them with the deliberation of a surgeon choosing a scalpel. You half expect him to have a special brush just for signing his name. Historians still argue whether this obsessive focus on scholarly accoutrements was a noble celebration of the tools of civilization or a corrosive form of materialistic one-upmanship that undermined the Confucian ideals of moderation and merit. Sitting here, watching Official Park preen over his inkstone, you feel it was probably a bit of both. The pursuit of beauty and the pursuit of status are often tangled together so tightly they become indistinguishable. Your gaze moves from the objects to the people. You begin to read the subtle choreography of movement. When a senior official stands, the junior officials in his immediate vicinity subtly straighten their postures without looking up. When someone enters the room to deliver a message, you notice who receives a respectful nod, who gets a neutral glance, and who is utterly ignored. You, currently, are in the neutral glance category, which is better than being ignored. Official Yi, you note, receives nods from almost everyone. He doesn't have the most expensive inkstone, but he possesses an air of quiet, unshakable competence. People respect his brush, not his bling. This is a crucial distinction, and one you file away for future reference. The hierarchy isn't just about wealth and birth. There's a parallel hierarchy of perceived capability, and that might be a ladder you can actually climb. For now, you keep your head down, your plain inkstone grinding, and you try to make the characters from your brush speak with a clarity and precision that your tools cannot. The document before you is a mess. It's a preliminary draft of a proposal from the Ministry of Taxation, a convoluted text filled with ambiguous phrasing and contradictory clauses. Reading it is like wading through mud. You understand the core issue, a suggested adjustment to the cloth tax, but the language is so opaque it's almost defensive, as if the author feared making a clear, defensible statement more than he feared being misunderstood. This, you realize, is your first real test beyond simple transcription. You are expected to redraft this. To take this bureaucratic hairball and comb it into something smooth, clear, and, most importantly, safe for your superior to put his name to. This is the mainstream historical craft of the Sogyok, the memo or draft document. In the Joseon bureaucracy, the substance of a policy was often less critical than its presentation. The perfect memo was a work of art. It anticipated every question, shielded its author from blame, credited its superiors with wisdom, and guided the reader to the desired conclusion without ever appearing to do so. It was political jujitsu, using the weight of protocol and precedent to throw opposition gently to the side. Your academy training in classical rhetoric was merely the raw ore. This is the process of smelting it into a usable tool. You must now employ the strategic use of what you privately call weasel characters. These are specific Chinese characters that introduce ambiguity, deference, or plausible deniability. For instance, using the character you, meaning by means of or depending on, allows you to suggest an action without directly recommending it. Phrasing a sentence as depending on the revered wisdom of the ministry, it could be considered, is far safer than the ministry should do this. You scan the original draft, hunting for its blunt, dangerous assertions, and begin the delicate work of replacing them with these softer, more sophisticated alternatives. It feels a bit like disarming a trap. You also learn the power of the historical precedent citation. A bad memo says, "I think we should do this." A good memo says, "As the revered King Sejong wisely decreed in a similar circumstance in the 15th year of his reign." It doesn't matter if the circumstance was only vaguely similar. Anchoring your suggestion in the golden age of a past monarch makes it almost bulletproof. You spend a good hour digging through a reference text of royal edicts, looking for a king who once said something, anything, about the stability of cloth standards. You find a passing mention in a decree about ceremonial robes. It's a stretch, but it will do. You weave it into your draft, creating a thread of connection between your mundane tax proposal and the hallowed wisdom of the throne. Historians still argue whether this pervasive culture of indirect, precedent-laden communication fostered remarkable stability and consensus, or whether it stifled innovation and critical thought, making the bureaucracy incapable of responding decisively to novel crises. As you carefully construct your sentence about textile valuation, framing it not as your idea but as the natural extension of King Sejong's enduring legacy, you feel the truth of both sides. You are creating a document that is elegant, sophisticated, and politically astute. You are also ensuring that no single person, least of all you, can be held solely responsible for its contents. It is governance by collective anonymity. Finally, you turn to the most crucial part, the attribution. Your original draft ended with a recommendation. Your redraft ends with a question, a masterpiece of deferential framing. Would the esteemed ministers perhaps find it agreeable to consider this humble path, in light of the sage precedents cited above, for their ultimate discernment? You have taken a position and hidden it in plain sight. You've done the thinking, but you've offered the conclusion as a mere suggestion for their superior intellect to discover. You sand off the rough edges, soften the sharp corners, and wrap the whole thing in layers of respectful cotton wool. When you are finished, the document is unrecognizable from the original. It says the same thing, but it says it safely. You set your brush down and look at your work. It's no longer a messy draft, it's a polished shield. You haven't just written a memo, you've performed your first act of bureaucratic survival. The silence of the office, you begin to understand, is an illusion. The real work, the flow of vital intelligence, doesn't happen over the desks during the official hours of scratching brushes. It happens in the spaces between, in the hallway leading to the latrine, near the bronze urn where tea leaves are dumped, and in the shadowy alcove by the back staircase where the drafts from the mountain make the lantern flames shiver. This is the whispered network, and your initiation into it begins with a single, offhand comment from Yi. You are both washing your brushes at the stone basin during a brief lull. The water swirls with tendrils of black ink, like smoke in water. He doesn't look at you, focusing on cleaning the fine hairs of his brush with a fastidiousness you're starting to recognize as his defining trait. The report from the Gyeongsang coastal magistrate, he says, his voice barely above a murmur. The one about the exemplary harvest. You nod, remembering the document. It was unusually cheerful. Note the date it was sent, Yi continues, rinsing his brush. And then note the date of the severe typhoon recorded in the Astronomy Bureau's logs for that same region. The one that flattened 3 villages. A cold knot tightens in your stomach. You had processed that report. You had found its optimism a pleasant respite. You had not cross-referenced it with the meteorological records. The magistrate had filed a blatantly false report, likely to avoid the appearance of failure and the subsequent audit of his disaster relief funds. This was the mainstream, gritty reality of information control. The official record was often a tapestry of lies, half-truths, and carefully curated facts, and your job was often to be the silent, knowing weaver. You mutter a quiet thank you, senior official Yi. He gives a slight, almost imperceptible nod. This is not a friendship, it is a transaction. He has given you a piece of intelligence. You are now in his debt. The currency here is not coin, but favor and information. Later, you will have to find something of equal value to offer him, a warning, a glimpse of a document before it reaches his desk, the name of a junior clerk in another ministry who is lazy with his seals. You return to your desk, your mind racing. You pull the Astronomy Bureau's logs from a nearby shelf, your hands feeling clumsy. There it is, clear as day. A major storm on the exact date the magistrate claimed his region was basking in agricultural prosperity. You had missed it. But now you know. This knowledge is power, but it is a dangerous, volatile power. Do you report the discrepancy? Absolutely not. To do so would be to declare war on that magistrate and, by extension, whatever faction or patron he belongs to. It would also make you look foolish for not having caught it yourself initially. No, the correct move is to simply know. To file this piece of information away in the mental ledger you are now starting to keep. The magistrate of Gyeongsang is a liar. That is a useful thing to know. You start listening differently. The low murmur of conversation between two mid-level officials by the door is no longer background noise. It's a data stream. You catch snippets. The minister's nephew was seen visiting the house of the singer by. And, the review of the northern garrison supplies has been postponed again, they say due to illness. Each fragment is a puzzle piece. The first suggests a potential vulnerability or a source of leverage over the minister. The second hints at deeper problems in the military logistics chain, problems someone is trying to hide. Historians still argue whether this culture of gossip and clandestine information sharing was a necessary adaptive mechanism that allowed the bureaucracy to function around its own rigid formalities, or a corrosive force that undermined official channels and fostered paranoia. As you sit there, pretending to be engrossed in a tax report while your ears are straining to catch every whisper, you feel it is undoubtedly both. It's the grease in the gears and the grit in the bearing all at once. You are no longer just a processor of documents. You are a node in the network, receiving, storing, and soon, you hope, transmitting. A few days later, a minor crisis unfolds silently at the desk of a junior official named Bak, a man who started around the same time you did. You hear a soft, desperate curse, the kind that is swallowed almost before it leaves the lips. His primary brush, his workhorse, has split at the ferrule, the bristles splaying out in a useless, ragged fan. He stares at it in horror. It is the equivalent of a modern office worker's computer crashing an hour before a major deadline. He fumbles for a replacement, but his other brushes are either too fine for general writing or are cheap, scratchy things that will make his characters look clumsy and uneducated. You see the panic in his eyes. A poorly written document is a direct reflection of the writer's mind. To submit work with ugly script is to proclaim one's own incompetence. This is your moment. You remember the 2 extra, good quality standard brushes you brought on your first day, a piece of cautious advice from an uncle who had served a brief stint in a provincial office. They were not as fine as Yi's, but they were reliable, well-balanced, and produced a clean, consistent line. You had packed them out of a sense of over-preparation. Now, you understand they were a strategic reserve. Without a word, you open your own lacquered brush case, select one of the spares, and place it on the edge of Bak's desk. He looks from the brush to you, his face a mixture of shock, suspicion, and immense relief. This is the complex ritual of the gift, and it is fraught with unspoken rules. A gift that is too large or expensive would be an obvious bribe, creating an obligation so large it would breed resentment. A gift that is too small or practical, like a spare piece of paper, would be meaningless, barely worth the acknowledgement. But a gift of a crucial tool, of equivalent but not superior quality to your own, given in a moment of genuine need? This is the sweet spot. It is an offer of alliance, a signal that says, we are in this together. I cannot, Back stammers, the protocol of refusal warring with his desperate need. It is merely a spare, you say, your tone deliberately light, as if it's the most trivial thing in the world. A brush prefers to be used, not to sit idle. Please, it would honor me. This is the correct script. You are not doing him a favor. You are granting the brush its desire, and him the honor of fulfilling it. He hesitates for only a second longer before bowing his head slightly. You are most generous. I am in your debt. He takes the brush, his fingers closing around it with a palpable sense of salvation. The transaction is complete. You have not just given him a tool, you have given him face, and in return, you have acquired a small but significant measure of his loyalty. He is now, in the subtle hierarchy of obligation, slightly beneath you. The exchange of scholarly implements was a recognized form of social bonding and political maneuvering among the literati, a tangible expression of the Confucian web of reciprocal obligations. The rest of the day, you feel the shift. Back, when he goes to fetch tea, brings a cup back for you as well. He casually mentions that the official in charge of assigning the more desirable, smaller document batches is partial to a particular type of honeyed pastry, a tidbit he overheard in the hallway. This is him beginning to repay his debt, feeding you into the whispered network. Historians still argue whether this system of calculated gift-giving and obligation was a flexible, organic social adhesive that helped the bureaucracy function, or a form of systemic corruption that ensured advancement was based on connections rather than pure merit. As you watch Back efficiently complete his work with your brush, his script clean and confident once more, you find the question irrelevant. It simply is. It is the water you swim in. You have successfully cast your first small line into the social pond, and you have felt a tug on the other end. The paper mountain is still there, but you are no longer climbing it alone. The man in charge of your immediate fate is Senior Officer Jim, a man whose face seems to have been permanently set in a mild, unreadable frown. He is not the highest-ranking official in the room, but he is the gatekeeper for your work, the filter through which every document you process must pass before it ascends to the next level of the bureaucratic heavens. Managing his gaze becomes your primary occupation. You learn that he values two things above all: predictable rhythm and the illusion of his own indispensability. The mainstream historical dynamic at play here is that of the sage-uck, the master-disciple relationship that structured so much of Joseon official life. While not a formal teacher, Jim is your superior, and your success is a reflection of his leadership. Your failure, however, is entirely your own. This creates a delicate dance. You must be competent enough to make his section run smoothly, but never so brilliant or independent that you threaten his position or make him look superfluous. You develop strategies. You never complete a task too quickly. A sudden, empty desk might suggest you were given too little work, making Jim look like a poor manager of resources. Instead, you maintain a steady, visible stack, ensuring it diminishes at a consistent, respectable pace. You also master the art of the guided discovery. When you find an error in a document, like the false harvest report, you do not march up to Jim and announce your cleverness. Instead, you approach him with a look of respectful confusion. "Senior officer," you say, laying the Gyeongsang report and the astronomy log open on his desk. "Forgive my uncertainty, but I am struggling to reconcile these two dates. My inexperience perhaps blinds me to a logical explanation you would grasp instantly." You watch his eyes scan the documents. The faintest tightening at the corners of his mouth reveals he sees the discrepancy immediately. But you have framed it as your failing, not his oversight, and you have offered him the chance to be the wise solver of the problem. Ah, he says, leaning back. Yes, this is a common issue with regional reports from that area. The dating conventions can be ambiguous. You were right to bring this to me. He has not thanked you. He has absorbed your work and credited himself with the solution, which is exactly what you wanted. He now sees you as diligent and discreet, not as a rival. Jim himself is a master. He will often be seen striding purposefully across the office with a scroll in hand, even if the scroll is just a copy of yesterday's menu from the canteen. The appearance of motion is as important as the motion itself. Your most crucial calculation involves when to be invisible and when to be seen. You make sure you are at your desk, brush in hand, when Jim makes his first round in the morning and his last check before departing in the evening. Those are the impression-making moments. The hours in between, when he is sequestered in his slightly larger alcove, you can afford a short, actual break, or time to slowly peruse a reference text. Historians still argue whether this focus on perception over productivity, on managing upward, was a rational adaptation to a rigid system or a fundamental flaw that diverted energy from substantive governance. For you, the debate is academic. The reality is the frown on Jim's face. Today, as he passes your desk, his eyes scan your orderly stacks and your steadily moving brush. The frown does not lessen, but it does not deepen. He gives a single, curt nod. It is not praise. It is the absence of condemnation. And in the economy of Jim's gaze, that is a fortune. The chime for the midday meal is a different sound entirely, softer, more inviting, yet charged with a new kind of tension. The rigid hierarchy of the desk lines dissolves into a fluid, social ballet, and you are swept into the current of officials flowing toward the dining hall. The air, once dominated by the scent of ink and old paper, is now thick with the savory, pungent aroma of fermented cabbage, grilled fish, and steaming rice. Your stomach growls in anticipation, a traitorously loud sound in the quiet shuffling of feet. This is the mainstream historical institution of the Sura-san, the meal table, and it is anything but a break. It is a diplomatic summit where more statecraft is practiced over a bowl of doenjang jigigi than in many formal meetings. The tables are low, and the seating is not assigned, but it is governed by a protocol as strict as any royal audience. You hang back, watching the senior officials take their places at the central tables, their cushions slightly thicker, their individual portions of banchan perhaps featuring an extra piece of kimchi or a sliver more of meat. You are part of the junior cloud, swirling at the periphery, looking for a safe place to land. You see back, the official whose brush you lent, sitting with a few other low-level clerks. He catches your eye and gestures to an empty cushion beside him. It's a lifeline. You slide onto the cushion with a murmur of thanks, the simple act of sitting down feeling like a successfully negotiated treaty. The food is served in lacquered bowls, a simple but nourishing spread. The unspoken rule of the meal now reveals itself, the sharing of banchan. The small side dishes are placed in the center of the table, communal property. To take the last piece of anything, especially the more prized items like the jawn pancake or the braised potatoes, is a serious social faux pas. You watch as a senior official at the next table delicately splits the last piece of fish with his chopsticks, offering half to the man beside him. It's a performance of generosity and restraint. You follow suit, taking only modest portions from the shared plates, ensuring you never deplete any one dish. The conversation at your table is light, a careful dance around the edges of work. They discuss the unseasonable chill, a new book of poetry that is popular in the city, the merits of different inkstick vendors. It is all safe, neutral territory. No one mentions the false harvest report or the minister's nephew. This is not the place for the whispered network. This is a place to build rapport, to be seen as a pleasant, harmonious colleague. You contribute a small, humorous anecdote about your struggle to find a decent inkstone when you first arrived in the capital, playing up your own provincial naivete for laughs. It works. They smile. You are not a threat, you are one of them. Historians still argue whether these communal meals primarily reinforced group solidarity and Confucian ideals of harmony or simply provided a formalized arena for the same status competitions that took place in the office. As you carefully accept a small offering of spinach from Back, who is subtly repaying his brush debt, you feel the truth is, again, a mixture. The meal is a bonding ritual, but it is also a continuous, low-stakes test of your social grace. A misstep with your chopsticks, a too loud slurp of your soup, a greedy reach for the banchan, any of these could mark you as uncouth, undoing the careful image of competence you've built at your desk. You finish your rice, your bowl clean, and you place your chopsticks neatly across the top. The ritual is complete. You have navigated the lunchtime politics without a single spilled dish or social blunder. You rise with the others, feeling not quite full, but satisfied. You have passed the test, for now. The afternoon sun slants through the lattice, casting long, lazy shadows across the floor. A post-meal torpor settles over the office, a collective desire to lean back, close one's eyes, and digest in peace. This is the most vulnerable time of the day, the period when productivity is at its lowest ebb. And it is precisely now that official Minute chooses to strike. Minute is not your superior. He holds a rank nearly identical to your own, a fact that seems to cause him physical discomfort. He is the saboteur of the afternoon slump, a human vortex of distraction and misplaced energy. While everyone else is fighting to keep their focus, Minute is a flurry of pointless activity. He decides now is the perfect time to reorganize the entire shelf of provincial tax records from the last decade, creating a rustling, shuffling, sighing symphony of disruption directly behind you. He hums a tuneless, off-key folk song under his breath, just loud enough to be heard. He develops a sudden, persistent cough. The mainstream historical reality he embodies is the friction of a large, sedentary bureaucracy. In any system this size, there will be individuals whose talents lie not in diligent work, but in navigating the spaces around it. Minute is a master of appearing busy while accomplishing nothing, and his primary method is to ensure no one else can accomplish anything either. He is the living, breathing manifestation of institutional drag. You try to ignore him, focusing on a complex report about river dredging, but your concentration is shattered by the sound of him dropping a heavy ledger with a theatrical thud. "Oh, clumsy me," he exclaims to no one in particular. You feel a muscle in your jaw twitch. This is where you learn the essential skill of strategic deafness. It's not just about blocking out noise, it's about cultivating an aura of such profound, unshakable focus that even Min's antics cannot pierce it. You straighten your spine, slow your breathing, and narrow your entire world down to the tip of your brush and the characters on the page. You become a statue of diligence. It doesn't work. Undeterred by your silent rebuke, he glides over to your desk. "That report on the river," he says, peering over your shoulder. "A tricky one. I had to process a similar document from Huanghe province last year. The silt levels were completely different, of course. Much coarser grain. It required a completely different calculation for labor costs. I drafted a whole supplementary memo on the subject. I could find it for you, if you like. It might save you some time." His offer is a poison pill. Accepting it would mean admitting your ignorance and placing yourself in his debt, all while wasting an hour listening to him rummage through scrolls. Refusing it risks appearing arrogant. This is the test. You look up, your face a mask of polite neutrality. Your expertise is renowned, official Minute. You say, the flattery feeling oily on your tongue but serving its purpose. However, Senior Officer Jim was most specific in his instructions for this particular document. He emphasized a direct methodology. I would not dare deviate from his path. You have deftly used Jim's authority as a shield. You haven't rejected Minute. You have deferred to a higher power. Min's smile tightens. Of course. The senior officer's wisdom is specific. He lingers for a moment, hoping for a crack in your armor, but finding none, he drifts away to find another victim. Historians still argue whether figures like Minute were merely petty annoyances or if they served a latent function, perhaps by inadvertently testing the patience and diplomatic skill of their colleagues, weeding out those who lacked the temperament for high-stakes bureaucracy. As you watch him descend upon a drowser looking back, you lean toward the petty annoyance theory, but you can't deny the lesson he imparted. You have just won a small, silent battle. You defended your focus and your territory without raising your voice or filing a complaint. You have learned to identify the saboteur, and more importantly, you have learned how to build a wall of procedure and politeness to keep him out. You turn back to your river report, the characters suddenly seeming clearer, the path forward less obstructed. The scratch in your throat begins as a faint, almost imaginary tickle during the hour of the monkey. At first, you ignore it, blaming the dry air and the endless dust from old scrolls. But by the time you're reviewing a particularly contentious land dispute between two powerful families from Jeolla province, it has blossomed into a full, rasping ache. You take a sip of lukewarm tea, but it does nothing to soothe the raw feeling. A plan begins to form in your mind, delicate and precise as a master calligrapher's stroke. This isn't just a cold, it's an opportunity. The document before you is a viper. The two families, the Park and the Lee, have been feuding for generations, and this latest quarrel over a wooded hillside is a proxy war. The local magistrate, terrified of offending either side, has kicked the decision up to the capital. The file has been circulating through the office for a week, leaving a trail of anxious officials in its wake. No one wants to be the one to draft the recommendation. To side with the Parks is to make an enemy of the Lees, who have a cousin in the Ministry of Rights. To side with the Lees is to alienate the Parks, whose patriarch is a childhood friend of a prominent royal inspector. It is a classic no-win scenario, a bureaucratic trap. This is where you deploy the mainstream historical practice of the strategic withdrawal. In a culture that prized diligence and loyalty, conspicuous absence was a powerful, if risky, tool. Falling genuinely ill was a misfortune. But cultivating the appearance of impending illness at the exact moment an unwinnable task landed on your desk? That was an art form. You couldn't just leave. You had to perform the decline. You let a soft, wet cough escape your lips, just loud enough for ye, across from you, to hear. You see his brush hesitate for a fraction of a second. You then make a show of shaking your head slightly, as if to clear it, and blink several times as if struggling to focus on the characters. You take another sip of tea, your hand trembling ever so slightly. The performative aspect of this is the timing. You don't collapse dramatically. You stage a slow, credible descent. You want witnesses to your valiant but failing struggle against the encroaching malaise. After another 15 minutes of this subtle theater, you rise, moving a little slower than usual, and approach Senior Officer Jim's alcove. You bow, slightly less deeply than normal, suggesting a body weakened by affliction. Senior Officer, you rasp, your voice carefully hoarsened. I apologize for my inadequacy. I find a sudden fever coming upon me, and my focus is failing. I fear I will make an error in the Jeolla land report if I continue in this state. With your permission, I would seek to withdraw for the day, so that I might return tomorrow with a clear head and serve you properly. You have framed it perfectly. You are not abandoning your duty. You are safeguarding the quality of the work out of respect for him. You are presenting your illness as an affront to your own desire to serve, not an inconvenience to him. Jim looks up from his own work, his eyes narrowing slightly. Is he assessing your health or your motives? You allow another cough to shake your shoulders. He sighs, the sound of a man burdened by the physical failings of his inferiors. The air in here has been damp, he concedes, granting your illness the legitimacy of an environmental cause. Very well. Do not return until you are fully recovered. I will have official Minute reassign the Giola report. He says the last part with a faint grimace, a shared understanding that Minute is the lesser of two evils here. You have not only dodged the viper, you have made Jim complicit in your dodge. Historians still argue whether this kind of strategic malingering was a rational coping mechanism for officials navigating impossible political pressures or a symptom of a system that punished decisive action. As you gather your things, your symptoms already beginning to abate with the relief of your escape, you don't care about the scholarly debate. You care about the fact that the viper is now in Min's basket, and you are walking out into the cool, fresh afternoon air, your reputation for dedication intact, your future unburdened by an unwinnable feud. It is your most successful work of the day. The morning after your strategic retreat dawns bright and clear, your miraculous recovery complete. You return to the office feeling refreshed, and find the atmosphere subtly changed. The Giola land report is indeed on Min's desk, and he looks like he hasn't slept, his eyes darting between the document and the senior official's alcove with the frantic energy of a cornered mouse. You offer him a sympathetic nod, which he ignores, and you settle back into your routine with a quiet sense of victory. But a new puzzle presents itself almost immediately. A directive from the Ministry of Personnel, which should have been a simple, routine announcement about filing deadlines, has been delayed. Not by much, just a day, but in the clockwork precision of the royal bureaucracy, a single missed tick is a notable event. You mention the delay quietly to back over tea. He just shrugs. The calendar keeper, he says, as if that explains everything. And you realize, with a dawning sense of understanding, that it does. In an office ruled by dates, deadlines, and astrological auspices, the unassuming official in charge of the official calendar and its associated schedules holds a power far beyond his rank. His name is Song, and he is a man of few words and impeccable timing. This is the mainstream historical role of the Ilgwan, the calendar official. His primary duty was maintaining the complex lunisolar calendar, determining auspicious days for everything from royal audiences to the start of construction projects. But this authority bled into the mundane, giving him de facto control over the flow of all internal administrative deadlines. A document wasn't just due. It was due on a specific, cosmically sanctioned day, and only Song could sanction it. You begin to watch him. He sits in a corner, surrounded by charts and almanacs, his desk a landscape of precise calculations. He rarely speaks to anyone, but people bring him small offerings, a cup of the best tea, a particularly fine pear, a new, soft brush. They are not bribes, exactly. They are gestures of respect, acknowledgments of his quiet sovereignty over time itself. The power is his ability to grant or withhold breathing room. He can, with a silent nod, accelerate a schedule for a favored official, creating the impression of supernatural efficiency. Or he can, with a sigh and a reference to an inauspicious planetary alignment, add 2 days to a deadline, saving someone from a rushed, disastrous job. You need to befriend him. But how? You cannot approach him with the clumsy politicking you used on back or the defensive maneuvering you used on minute. Song operates on a different plane. Your opportunity comes when you notice him, late one afternoon, squinting at a densely written chart, massaging his temple. The light is fading. Without a word, you rise, fetch a fresh candle from the supply closet, a thicker, longer-lasting beeswax one, not the cheap tallow sticks, and light it from a lantern before placing it gently on the corner of his desk. He doesn't look up, doesn't thank you. For a full minute, there is only the sound of his breathing and the soft hiss of the new wick. Then, still looking at his chart, he speaks, his voice dry and soft as falling leaves. "The review of the Southern Granary inventories," he says. "The deadline is the day after the full moon. It is often misread." He falls silent again. You bow slightly, though he isn't looking, and return to your desk, your heart thumping. It was not a thank you. It was a transaction. The candle for a piece of temporal intelligence. You now know that the granary inventory deadline is commonly mistaken, and you will not be the one to mistake it. You have made an offering to the god of deadlines, and he has given you his first, small blessing. Historians still argue whether the immense power vested in the calendar keepers was a necessary integration of cosmology and statecraft or an irrational surrender of administrative logic to superstition. But as you watch the steady flame of your beeswax candle illuminate Song's calculations, you understand that it doesn't matter. Power is where you find it, and you have just found it in the man who controls the clock. The conflict with official Huang from the records department had been brewing for a week. A silent, glacial Cold War fought with the smallest of weapons. It began when a document you needed, a land survey from 3 years prior, was unavailable for 2 days, causing you to miss a preliminary deadline. The following day you accidentally spilled a tiny, almost symbolic drop of ink on a roster of names he had submitted, forcing him to recopy the entire thing. No words were exchanged. The hostility was communicated through delayed scrolls, misplaced seals, and the careful rearrangement of files to cause maximum inconvenience. It was unsustainable, a drain on your focus and a potential stain on your reputation if it escalated. The solution, as it so often is in this world, is tea. Not a grand, formal invitation which would be too obvious, but a casual, almost spontaneous gesture. You wait for the mid-afternoon lull. Then you walk over to the small station where hot water is kept simmering over a brazier. You prepare 2 cups, using the good quality green tea leaves you keep for yourself in a small porcelain jar, a small luxury you afford yourself. You carry both cups back to your desk area. Then you perform the delicate maneuver. You approach Huang's desk, which is situated near the archives shelves. He looks up, his expression guarded, his body tense. "Official Huang," you say, your voice neutral, devoid of either warmth or accusation. "The afternoon drags. I find tea helps. I have brought you a cup." You place the steaming cup on the edge of his desk, far enough away not to be a threat, but close enough to be an offering. This is the mainstream historical practice of charai, or tea etiquette, used as a tool of conflict resolution. The act of serving tea was a ritual of deference and peace. By serving him, you are, in this context, offering a truce. You are acknowledging the conflict without naming it, and you are taking the subordinate position to end it. The quality of the tea is the apology. The act of serving is the white flag. He stares at the cup for a long moment, the steam curling between you. The entire office is watching, though everyone is pretending not to. They have sensed the tension. Now they are waiting to see how it resolves. His acceptance or rejection will set the new terms of your relationship. To refuse would be a declaration of permanent war, an act of profound incivility that would mark him as intractable. To accept is to agree to reset the board. Finally, with a slow, deliberate motion, he reaches out and takes the cup. He does not thank you. Instead, he takes a small, appreciative sip. "The leaves are from Yiri Mountain," he observes, his tone shifting from hostile to analytical. "They are, you confirm, a modest harvest, but the flavor is clean." He nods once. Clean. The word hangs in the air, absolving you of the ink spill. as his acceptance of the tea absolved him of the delayed document. The part of the ritual is now complete. The conflict is over. No more will be said about it. Historians still argue whether these formalized rituals of reconciliation effectively maintained social harmony or merely suppressed open conflict, allowing resentments to fester beneath a veneer of politeness. But as you return to your desk and see Huang take another longer drink of the tea, you feel the tension in the room dissipate like the steam from the cup. The peace is real for now. It may be fragile, it may be temporary, but it is peace. You have navigated your first official dispute without a single raised voice or formal complaint, using only hot water and dried leaves as your weapons and your peace treaty. You take a sip of your own tea. It tastes of victory. It starts not with a royal edict or a formal notice from the Ministry of Personnel, but with a loaf of bread. Well, not a loaf, precisely, but a beautifully woven bamboo container holding a perfectly round, sweet Huang Tai bread, a specialty from the Gangwon region. An attendant you've never seen before places it silently on the corner of your desk one afternoon, gives a shallow, respectful bow, and departs without a word. You stare at it, bewildered. There is no note. Back, noticing your confusion, leans over. The baker's brother is a clerk in the office of the second state councillor, he murmurs. He only sends those to officials who are being considered. The grapevine promotion has begun. The official machinery of advancement grinds slowly, with written evaluations and formal recommendations. But the real news travels fast and silently, through the whispered network, carried on gifts of food and shifts in behavior. The next day, official minute, the afternoon saboteur, asks for your opinion on a minor point of protocol. He doesn't sneer, he genuinely seems to be asking. It's the most disconcerting thing he's ever done. Later, when you pass Senior Officer Jim in the hallway, he doesn't just give his usual curt nod, he actually pauses and asks, "Is the air in your section adequate? I find it can grow stale near the archives." It's a bizarre, coded question, but its meaning is clear. You have entered his field of vision not as a subordinate, but as a potential peer. This is the mainstream, yet utterly unofficial, process of advancement in a system where public ambition was considered vulgar. No one would ever congratulate you. That would imply the outcome was certain, and more importantly, it would force you into a position of having to humbly deny it, creating social friction. Instead, people begin to treat you as if you have already been promoted. The hierarchy adjusts around your potential future self. It's a dizzying, unsettling experience. You are the same person, doing the same work, but the social molecules around you are realigning. The calendar keeper, Song, who has only ever spoken to you once, now seems to make eye contact as you pass. A senior official from the Rights Ministry, whom you've only ever seen from a distance, stops you to comment on the unseasonable warmth, and casually mentions that a new position is being created to liaise between the Secretariat and the Royal Library, a position that would, incidentally, come with a significant jump in rank and a private alcove. The information is not offered as a tip, it is simply released into the air near you, like scent from a perfume bottle, for you to catch or not. You feel like a player in a game where everyone knows the rules but you, and they have all suddenly decided you on the verge of learning them. Historians still argue whether this system of preemptive social promotion was an elegant way to ease transitions and test an official's grace under pressure, or a cruel psychological game that heightened the agony of potential failure. Every friendly glance, every piece of unsolicited advice, feels like a brick being placed on your shoulders. The bread sits on your desk, uneaten. It is not food, it is a question. Can you carry this weight? Can you perform the role of a higher-ranking official before you actually are one? You look at the bread, then at the steady, knowing back of official Yi. He doesn't turn around, but you feel his approval. You are being watched, and you are passing the test. For now, that is all that matters. The document that will define your future, or break it, arrives with no fanfare. It is the final draft of the new regulations for the state-run ceramics workshops, a project you have been shepherding for weeks. You've compiled the reports on clay quality, fuel costs, and artisan grievances. You've drafted and redrafted the proposal, balancing the Treasury's demand for efficiency with the craftsman's plea for more creative freedom. The core of your argument, the one you've built with painstaking care, is a compromise. A tiered system where a quota of standardized bowls and plates must be met, but where a small percentage of an artisan's time can be dedicated to innovative, potentially more lucrative, pieces. You believed it was a masterstroke of pragmatic policy. But now, as you read the final version prepared for the State Councilor's seal, your blood runs cold. Sometime in the last night, between your final review and this morning's printing, a single, crucial line has been altered. The clause protecting the artisan's creative time has been replaced. It now reads that all artistic experimentation is subject to the prior approval of the provincial magistrate, a man known for his contempt for anything that deviates from centuries-old designs. It is a death sentence for your compromise, a capitulation to the hardliners in the Ministry of Finance. Someone has sabotaged you. The edit is subtle, a change of only a few characters, but it eviscerates the entire spirit of your proposal. This is the mainstream historical reality of bureaucratic power plays. The real battles were not fought in open debate, but in the silent, ink-stained trenches of the final draft. To go to your superior now and cry foul would be to admit you lost control of your own document. It would reveal you as someone who could not manage the process, a fatal flaw. The only path forward is the gambit. You must make the correction yourself, and you must do it in a way that is both undeniable and untraceable back to you as a personal act of defiance. You wait for the perfect moment, the hour when the senior officials are in their daily briefing and the room is at its sleepiest, post-lunch haze. The final draft is on the out desk, ready for its final journey. Your heart hammers against your ribs. The high-stakes tool of your salvation is a specific type of proofreading mark, one so archaic and precise that its use implies not correction, but the restoration of a scribal error. You approach the desk, your face a mask of casual curiosity, as if you're just giving the document one last, admiring glance. You pick up the fine-line correction brush. With a hand that does not tremble, you dip it and, next to the altered characters, you make two tiny, specific marks. One indicates a ditography, a scribe's accidental repetition. The other points to the original, correct characters in the margin, which you now swiftly and perfectly reinscribe, matching the script exactly. The marks you've made do not say "I am changing this." They say, "A lazy scribe made a mistake, and I, a diligent scholar, have discovered and rectified it." It is done. You place the brush down and walk away, not looking back. You have not defended your idea, you have erased the conflict altogether. You have made the document correct, and in doing so, you have made your version of the truth the official one. Historians still argue whether the culture of anonymous, last-minute edits was a necessary mechanism for consensus building, allowing for changes without public confrontation, or a fundamentally dishonest practice that rewarded deception. As you return to your desk, the adrenaline slowly receding, you don't feel dishonest. You feel like a gardener who has just removed a poisonous weed threatening a carefully tended plant. You have saved your ceramics policy. You have executed the final draft gambit. Now, you can only wait, and hope that the councillor's seal comes down upon your restored text, cementing your victory in official silence. The final chime of the day resonates through the hall, a clear, clean sound that seems to wash away the accumulated tension of the last 8 hours. Around you, the ritual of departure begins, a slow, deliberate unwinding. Brushes are cleaned with a finality that wasn't present during the midday break. Inkstones are covered. Documents are stacked into neat, closed piles. There is no rush, no stampede for the door. To leave too quickly would suggest a lack of dedication, an eagerness to escape one's duties. To linger too long would seem like sycophantic posturing or, worse, an admission that you couldn't manage your workload within the allotted time. You have learned this dance. You take your time. You ensure your desk is in perfect order, a model of bureaucratic tranquility, ready for the morning. You see Senior Officer Jim make his final round, and you are carefully, purposefully, not looking at him, engrossed in the act of aligning your spare brushes parallel to the edge of your desk. You feel his gaze sweep over your ordered domain, and you know, without looking, that he finds no fault. The silence he leaves in his wake is his form of praise. You stand, your joints protesting after the long day, and you bow slightly to the room at large, a generic gesture of respect that offends no one and commits to nothing. Official Yi returns the bow with a slight, knowing incline of his head. Official Minute is already gone, having made a theatrical show of being the last to give up and the first to leave. Back gives you a small, genuine smile. The grapevine promotion is still just a whisper, but the landscape of your relationships has permanently shifted. You have navigated the gift of a brush, the tea of truce, the strategic illness, and the final draft gambit. You have survived. You step out of the hall and into the courtyard. The transition is always jarring. The close, paper-scented air is replaced by the cool evening breeze, carrying the distant sounds of the city coming to life beyond the palace walls. The sky is a deep, luminous indigo, and the first stars are pricking through the velvet expanse. You walk slowly, your soft-soled shoes making no sound on the swept stones. You pass through the Guanghuamen Gate, this time moving against the tide of guards coming on duty, their armor gleaming in the torchlight. You are leaving the epicenter of power, returning to the mundane world. The walk home is your decompression chamber. The frantic energy of the day, the constant, low-grade hum of political calculation, begins to dissipate with every step. You think not of policy or precedent, but of the simple, physical world around you. The smell of roasting chestnuts from a street vendor, the laughter from a tavern, the warm glow of lanterns in house windows. You are a cog that has been removed from the great machine for the night, and the relief is physical. You think of the ceramics regulation, and you allow yourself a small, private flicker of pride. You have left your mark, a tiny, almost invisible scratch on the edifice of the kingdom. It is enough. For today, it is more than enough. You reach your own gate, your own small haven in the vast, sleeping city. You slide it open, and step inside, leaving the gentle, cutthroat politics of the office behind you until the sun rises again. And so, as the last echoes of the palace gates closing fade into the evening hush, let the weight of those scrolls and the pressure of those unspoken rules simply dissolve. Feel the cool night air on your skin, a gentle balm after the stuffy warmth of the office, and allow the rhythmic, quiet sounds of the sleeping city to lull your busy mind. You navigated a world where a single character held more power than a shout, where a shared cup of tea could mend a rift, and where survival depended on noticing the things left unsaid. You moved through it all with a quiet grace and a sharp mind, and now, that work is done. The ink is dry, the brushes are clean, and the documents are at rest. There is no problem to solve here, no memo to draft, no hierarchy to navigate. There is only the deep, calming darkness, and the reassuring certainty that for now, your only duty is to breathe, to let go, and to drift. The journey is over, the story is complete, and you can release it all, feeling the gentle pull of sleep wrapping around you like the softest silk, carrying you away into peaceful, dreamless quiet.